Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Breaking and Adventuring, an inside look of the Adams County Sheriff's Office and beyond, and just diving into the different aspects of what we do in our community. So this show, we're going to talk about the world of investigations and detective work. So brought with me a couple of our friends, longtime friends, to here just go into some of the background of what goes into casework and what led them to this avenue of what they do. So leave it off to you guys. So if you want to just give a quick little like verbal resume of who you are and what you're about, what you do.
So I'm Detective Ferdinandsen. I've been with the Sheriff's Office about 10 years now. Prior to this, and kind of an interesting story of how I fell into law enforcement was I was actually in high school. My dreams and aspirations were to be actually a computer programmer. And I
got the look.
Yeah, I do have the look. So I was thinking about going for that and picked up a summertime job at Waterworld and was working as a lifeguard. And I saw this guy. He was running from Federal Heights Police Department, some of the security staff over there. And I'm like, well, I'm a lifeguard. I should intervene. So
saving lives
makes total sense to me.
Made total sense to me too when I was 17 years old. So I ended up catching up to the guy that was evading him. Tackled him and got him onto the ground. And, the Federal Heights officer was pretty, excited that I caught this guy.
Yeah.
So, security staff then told me, hey, instead of being a lifeguard, why don't you become a security guard? And I'm like, all right, sounds kind of fun. So started working that. And I'm like, well, I'm actually really enjoying this kind of work. How could I do this full time?
Yeah.
I know I'll seek a career in law enforcement. So started with another agency for a few years and then came over to Adams County where I always wanted to come because this is where I grew up, and went to the jail, then went to the patrol division, became an FTO down there, ended up getting a work-related injury and was working the desk and actually started to have a lot of fun working. I wasn't going call to call all the time. I was working in a desk and I could try to see how far this investigation could go.
Yeah.
So after doing that, I'm like, kind of the similar thing of my origin story, I guess, if you want to call it that. I'm like, well, how could I do this full time? I know, I'll go become a detective. So been a detective for the last 2.5 years, 2 years or so. And just really enjoy it, really enjoy the work. And it's just a lot of fun.
Nice.
I think for me, the path to detectives was very similar. Definitely not the origin story.
Lifeguard?
Yeah.
Not the origin story. Not the lifeguard portion. But I started in the jail for about a year. Did 5 years on patrol, 3 of those years as a training officer with now Detective Ferdinandsen.
Yeah.
Those are some fun times. And then have a year about now in the detective division. Then 2 years on the SWAT team now too.
Nice. So you get just double duty.
Double dipping.
Yeah, there you go. Like, hold on, let me take off my glasses and my tie. And
I feel like I have
SWAT
3
gear.
costumes on. I have my detective outfit and my SWAT outfit.
Yeah, just do the little phone booth Superman thing. All right. So, that kind of got you in the world of detective. And honestly, mine was similar. So I always was curious. You submit your report as a patrol deputy and you're like, all right, now what? You don't hear anything about it until it might go to court, a year and a half or so later. Similar, I had an injury, I had a surgery. I'm at the front desk. But then I had friends of mine who had, gone up to detectives ahead of me who would just, come down and chit chat with me and I would just start picking their brains and, went to an autopsy with one, started just kind of figuring, okay, put some pieces together. Like, I want to learn more about what we do other than just, respond to a call, write report, rinse and repeat. So I mean, I think for a lot of us, it's kind of similar what you get, how you get to that point. Is it what you thought it would be?
Oh, I think in a sense it is, like portions of it is. And to your point, that's one of the things that I love is I get to see the back end of everything now. And that's what I kind of figured coming to detectives.
Yeah.
Like you have in the patrol division, you take that initial report, you go to that initial call, you handle it, and you kind of wash your hands, like you said. You don't really know what happens until you go to court. And now we're getting to see the back end and how much work goes into the actual investigation portion that you do things that I didn't even think about that you could do. I was very limited to just talking to people, and that's how you were investigating things, maybe getting a couple things off people's phones. But now on the back end, hear what we do and being able to write search warrants and being able to to look through a lot more stuff, a lot more databases. That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
That was the biggest part for me.
Well, and I think with having some type of computer background and that kind of stuff, I had no idea that would end up getting brought up later on in investigations.
Yeah.
So just the amount of information that's out there now, like it's unlimited, and you just keep going with. There's so much data that is just out there that I didn't think it would ever bleed into law enforcement, but it has, and I never anticipated that happening either.
Yeah, I think that's a cool thing too. You brought up a great point. Is like we have, and I'm sure it's replicated from a lot of our other agency partners. Just so many unique backgrounds, whether it's first careers or just hobbies that people have been able to utilize in their law enforcement career. That's been beneficial.
Right.
So that's a great point. Now, is there anything surprising, as in like, oops, I may have like done other things wrong now that I'm a detective? Like, boy, like,
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
I think the biggest one that comes to mind is report writing.
Yeah.
For me, yeah. I didn't know how much a report can impact the investigation, especially in getting that first report and then trying to go back and have some of those initial questions that you had get answered.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I might have missed
Yeah.
some stuff on some of these reports.
Yeah. Now you get you get one of those now from maybe from a different deputy, and you're sitting in front of a DA like, I don't know why this isn't in there. I don't know why this is in there.
Right.
Yeah. So definitely, it gives you a new set of eyes for sure. So in general, if you could kind of summarize for our listeners, what goes into casework? So we'll just say, in a sense, boom, you're assigned a new case. What does that look like?
So, I mean, the biggest thing when we get assigned to cases is just letting our victims know that, hey, we are working this case. I might have cases that I'm working, and it might be a little while before I can really start investigating that one particular case. But biggest thing is, a new case gets assigned to me. I let that victim know, hey, this is who I am. I'm assigned to your case. If you have questions or if you think of something else, let me know. Here's my desk number and that kind of stuff. Just that way they feel like they have somebody that cares about them and is communicating with them. People report crimes to law enforcement and then they don't hear anything. We want to make sure we're building that trust with people who are, victims of crimes. So that's my first step. And then second step is just going over the patrol reports. And it's kind of funny because I thought of a case where I was a patrol officer, and I think back of the things I did as a patrol officer.
Yeah.
And it was a guy who had smashed a window, and I arrested him for criminal mischief, and it was a felony mount. And the detective asked me, well, how do you know it's a felony mount? I'm like, they said it was a $2,000 window. And they're like, yeah, but how do you know it's a $2,000 window? I'm like, because they said it was a $2,000 window. I don't know what else you want. He's like, no, you actually have to measure it and do all these different things. And I'm like, I had no idea. Yeah. But no, anyways,
it's magic. It's $2,000.
It's a $2,000 window. I don't know what else you want. But no, so the first thing is just contacting that victim, start looking over those initial reports from patrol. Collecting surveillance video is huge because, we are a little bit more time constrained, a little bit more of a time constraint with that. We don't want to lose that surveillance footage.
Yeah.
So getting out into the field, pulling surveillance video, seeing if there was any other video that might have been across the street or something like that could have captured the incident. There's a lot of cameras nowadays, so chances of finding video are pretty good. And then just reviewing everything as much as possible. And then it might require certain search warrants to do certain things for, different data sets that we can obtain to help try to further that investigation. So every investigation is a little different. They all kind of take a life of their own and their own path. And some investigations require certain things and others don't. Yeah. And they're all unique in their own little way.
Yeah. So you have the rough outline of how you typically go work through a case, but then you'll have your little nuances for each one. Yeah. And so I'll give you a version of that. So what does a typical case look like when you're getting called out? Like, let's say in the middle of the night, something happens. All right, you're the responding detective. What do you do?
Get my coffee. Coffee is the number one. Get downstairs.
Wake up. Rub the sleep out of my eyes.
It's crazy because nobody really thinks about that portion.
No.
That like everybody knows you could go to the scene and you
Yeah.
arrive, but the beginning portion of getting woken up, my wife getting woken up,
Yeah.
there's a different ringtone for each call that's coming
Yeah.
in, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you're going to this place. Oh, this is SWAT call out. Oh, this is an actual detective call out.
Yeah.
They know what kind of happens, and then from there, getting your coffee ready and then heading out because I gotta have coffee before
There you go.
I start. But once you actually get to the scene, it can be a little chaotic at times, depending on what type of scene it is. And I mean, your first thing in there is to try to contact that supervisor that's on scene, that sergeant, try to get a rundown on what's happening.
Mm.
And then from there, you kind of have an outline in your head of what you're going to do next and try to game plan. But getting that initial information, I think, is critical because that's going to determine what you do next. In a sense. That'll determine what next steps you take for that.
Yeah. And what some people might not know is even though a sergeant is a higher rank, but as a detective, when you're being called on scene, you're essentially taking over. So you're able to say, hey, Sarge, I need this, I need that. So you're basically dictating now the next steps of who's going to go where, who's going to get interviewed and what you need locked down for your scene. So that's, so you're being woken up in the middle of the night and then, you're thinking of those things as you're heading down the scene, trying to gather info. So
the cool part is, in our workflows too, we have what's called field ops and we're able to see basically what the deputies are able to see on their computers.
Okay.
So what dispatch is putting on the computer. So what they're typing down as their person's calling 911.
Yeah.
What they're notating, we're able to see that as well. So that'll give us a little head start as we're driving to the scene, and we're like, okay, and we know kind of what's going on.
Yeah, that's another great thing about having just the advancement through technology. And it wasn't even that long ago that I was up there with you guys, and it was, if you didn't have your terminal, your MDC, it was just listen to the radio, or you just wait until you get there. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, there's tons of times where like I'm leaving one scene thinking I'm heading home at 2 a.m, but I leave my radio on, and all of a sudden I'm hearing, shots fired, something like, oh, let me just turn around and get back to that scene. So but it's, from both scenarios, that initial step of what you do as a detective is huge on what you're eventually going to deliver to the district attorney so they can actually prosecute the case. And some people might not know, they kind of cover it on like Law and Order and stuff, but we, at this level, you guys have to also work hand in hand with those DAs with another total entity, but have that teamwork and partnership.
Yes.
I don't know if there's any experience that you guys want to talk about with that.
And I would say for some of the bigger cases that we've had, what's been really helpful for us is we've actually had DAs that are responding with us now.
Oh, good. That's cool.
There's been a couple incidents where, I might be writing the warrant and I have a DA with me and they're kind of providing me, not necessarily telling me what to write, but they're coaching. They're thinking of things on the trial side of things. So having that initial response with the DA, I think, is very helpful for ultimately getting a guilty verdict on a person that committed a crime. So having them with us has been a huge benefit to some of the bigger call outs that we've had.
Yeah. What skill or skills would you say one needs if they're looking to get into a detective, but if you want to be an impactful detective or investigator, what kind of skill set do you think you need to have?
Ooh, I think it's hard because it depends on the situation. Because you definitely need like a teamwork mindset at times, and you need to be able to work as a team, especially on those big scenes, those big call outs.
Yeah.
Because there's multiple detectives that are getting called out to the scene, and not just detectives. You have deputies, you have sergeants, you have the DA's office. If there's any deaths, you have the coroner that's coming out. So being able to work together and work as a team and not just butt heads the whole time and kind of make it an ego thing is big. But I think for your personal cases, I think one of the biggest skills is going to be time management and knowing how and when to work that case and being able to take the time that you need in that case, but not take too long where you're neglecting the other cases that you have.
Yeah. How many typical cases do you guys have on your caseload at any time?
It varies. It kind of goes up and down. Different units have their own, caseload that they have. Like if you're working in a financial crime capacity, there's a lot of financial crimes that occur.
Yeah.
DVs, they have quite a lot of those too. Major crimes, we stay busy, but our caseload isn't as extensive, but those cases do require a little bit of more
Yeah.
follow up that, might not be required for some other type of cases. So it all depends. And, it's just like anything else. There's times where it feels like you're just so busy and you're never going to be caught up. But then you have those like little moments of reprieve where you're like, oh, thank God I finally finished this case. Now I can start working these other ones. So it varies.
No, and the time, that's a great point on the time management. I mean, because I even had to learn to juggle that and do it differently than I would have maybe like in the jail or on the road.
Oh yeah.
To where like, okay, I've got this case.
Yeah.
I'm knock out as much as possible. Okay, now I'm waiting for the crime lab to get back with me. So now I'm going to start focusing on these two other cases and make phone calls on this fourth case while I'm presenting this fifth case. So I mean, there's a lot of juggling. And I guess that leads me to my next question is how's being a detective different than working as a deputy, whether in our jail detention setting or on the patrol side?
Well, I think that, to be a good detective, I think you have to be a good patrol officer first and foremost. Like anybody that wants to become a detective at some point in their career, they should focus on becoming a good patrol officer. Because that's where you're going to really develop a lot of skills. Then when you become a senior guy on a shift, you're helping coach, some of the rookies and that kind of stuff, to where those skill sets that you get are a lot better. And they're more perfected and crafted, but it just all varies. I mean, every case they're different.
Yeah.
I think on patrol, it's a lot of split second decisions that you have to make and decisions while under pressure a lot of the time. And I think detectives, you do get that little time to breathe and make sure you look at the entirety of the case and like plan out what you want to do.
Yeah.
But I feel like your choices in detectives matter a lot as well, because it could either make or break the case in a sense. Yeah.
No, that you're absolutely right. Cause a lot of those details, I mean, there's at that point, cause we get the felony cases come up to you guys. I mean, it's high stakes at that point. You got families that are expecting a certain result or justice in some sense, whatever that means for that particular case. So a lot of pressure on you guys. Any standout cases or anything that comes to mind so far in your detective career that you're like, wow, I can't believe I had that, or just wild, or anything that stands out?
We're all on ongoing investigation, sir.
This isn't an IA podcast.
It's a need to know basis.
Yeah. Okay, talk about it. Yeah.
Do you have any?
I mean, I got a few, but
like you said, even generically, I mean, like it's, or just something where like you're reading through that initial report and you're like, what is this? Like, how am I even going to approach this?
Yeah. I think my first case where it was, you felt this excitement of like, I solved it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was, those first couple cases where you solve it, those are the ones that kind of stand out to you because it's like, I could do this,
Yeah.
So I had one case where a lady, she was in her townhome. She walked her daughter to school. She came back to her house and she heard a noise upstairs, and someone had broken into her house and was in the process of burglarizing it. And he shouted some stuff at her. She shouted some stuff at him, and they're kind of yelling at each other. She's on the bottom story and he's at the top floor, and she's scared, but she's like, I'm not backing down from this guy either. So, I mean, brave, right?
Right. We don't recommend that.
Yeah, don't recommend that. But she ultimately called 911. Ultimately, he runs out of her house, goods in hand, and she actually chases after him and is like, "Give me back my stuff." Yeah. How dare you? And the only information I had was just that, it was some guy. She never really got a good look at him or anything like that. Well. One of the things that I found out was certain private companies are, very, very helpful for law enforcement. So that's kind of what led this case into a pretty awesome direction, I think, where this guy, he stole her credit cards. And that was one of the things that he put in his pockets. Well, she started seeing all these transactions that had occurred at a Walmart nearby. So I'm like, okay, now I have a lead to pursue. And ultimately, I give Walmart the credit card number, and what I find out is that everything is tracked. All those transactions are tracked. So I get all their surveillance video. Their security staff at Walmart was amazing in providing me all this. All this information started to come my way, and I had this guy's face and everything like that. Well, it turned out that he also used his actual credit card at Walmart at the same time. So now, not only do I have a face, I have a name.
Yeah.
I look him up in a database, and it's my guy. So find out that he was arrested in Broomfield County for a separate case. And I got him on HD video, and he's walking out of Walmart. He looks right at the camera with a TV and a grocery cart that he purchased with the lady's credit card. He's looking right at it. And I find out this guy's been arrested by Broomfield County. So I go up to the Broomfield County jail. I introduce myself. You know, I don't let him know, like, hey, I know that you broke into this lady's house or anything. I just slide him a picture, and I'm like, is that you? And he's like, yeah, I was shopping at Walmart. I'm like, well, there you go.
There you go.
Cool.
So, you know, just having that
yeah.
thrill of like, you know, this lady was victimized by this guy, and just making that phone call of, hey, I found out who did this. He's been arrested. That was kind of what just made it to where it was like, I just love doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
One
know?
of my memorable ones was actually with Detective Ferdinandsen.
Which
It was when I first became a detective.
Mhm.
It was a rooster fighting case.
oh my gosh.
And we
Yeah.
ended up getting a search warrant for the house, going over to confiscate the roosters. But we're over there with animal control trying to confiscate these roosters.
Hang on. To my defense, that rooster was coming at me.
And these are
You
mean
didn't use your lifeguard skills on the rooster?
No.
These roosters just start trying to chase them around.
I go with
As
him
they're trying
on
to
one
get 'em.
search warrant, and I get chased around by a bunch of roosters.
Yeah, you're like, never again.
never again.
That's one of my more memorable ones.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I swear he looked at me in the eyes, and he was like, kind of like, he was kicking back his feet. Like
Yeah,
he was
the
getting-
craziest
look
in his eye.
And I'm like, what is going to happen? I've never encountered this.
Yeah, we haven't trained for this.
No, we're not.
I'm not skilled enough to deal with this.
Yeah. You're like, I'm not, like, don't,
Yeah, no.
I like to barbecue. Don't mess with me.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and you mentioned it too, is it through some of your casework, finding kind of that fulfillment and purpose of what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that was my next question, but we we're going to lead into that. Cause I had similar cases where basically the case came to me totally cold,
Mhm.
barely a lead, if anything, of a vague suspect description, and being able to work it all the way to where not only do you get to make the arrest, but then you get a conviction where you're like, wow, like a little, like I was able to resurrect this essentially cold, dead report.
Mhm.
So, I mean, and having some of those and some like family stuff where you kind of bring closure to families, like that's what drove me day in and day out. I mean, like, do you guys, I mean, what is it for you guys to find some fulfillment in your doing your investigative work?
I think it's just that it's
Mhm.
finding this, you know, finding these people that are, you know, ultimately they're not following the law. You know, they're victimizing people, and you know, at the end of the day, it's our duty to do it, but it's just that big fulfillment of knowing that you brought justice or you had some sense of closure where, you know, what happens in court and that kind of stuff, you know, our realm is just trying to investigate the case. So just having all these facts that you can present to a family of laying out that investigation, I think is probably one of the biggest things. And then, you know, and it could be from anything as far as like, you know, a stolen car to, you know, a homicide where at the end of the day, somebody was affected by this incident, and just being able to present it in a organized manner to the DA's office, seeing that prosecution, it's a different type of thrill. It's not running lights and sirens anymore, but it's still a thrill.
It's more methodical.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially as a detective, because at the patrol level, I mean, you do interact with the families when you're there, but after that night, you're done. You're done with family. But now as a detective, it's like you're not only going through this whole court process alone, like the family is going through this court process with you once you do make that arrest. So you're seeing them at court, you're seeing them when you're conducting follow-up, you're seeing them when you're letting them know of what's going on. So you build that connection with that family.
Yeah. I know just even some of the predecessors before all of us, still have relationships with certain families from standout cases and things like that.
Yeah.
So I mean that's huge. I mean, because you're involved in a lot of aspects of their lives, and you kind of you build that rapport, and you want to kind of speak on behalf of and fight for them. So speak on behalf of them. So that's cool. All right, so we'll go into a little bit of maybe a little fun segment here. So what are some fun things you guys like to do to decompress kind of on your own time? Like, so just get away, like, I just had this horrible case. I'm going to go do this.
You start.
Yeah. Think of something that's G-rated while he talks.
We'll let the brain process.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's barbecuing. We were just talking about that.
Yeah.
I love to barbecue. Actually, just barbecued yesterday.
Nice.
I go home, barbecued some skirt steak, some dinosaur
What was
ribs.
the chicken's name?
Yeah, the rooster's there.
Yeah, it's in his
No, I
freezer.
think barbecuing and just spending time with the families.
Yeah.
Definitely my decompressor.
Nice.
I think for me, just having, keeping your hobbies consistent. Like, one of the things in law enforcement is sometimes law enforcement starts to become your hobby, and just keeping those hobbies, whatever it may be. For me, snowboarding is a big one. We actually took second for the police officers.
I heard about that.
Snowboard race. So representing Adams County there.
Yeah.
Snowboarding, video games. I still like to tinker around with computers, although it does kind of bleed into work a little bit. I still like to build.
Yeah.
I build gaming PCs for kind of a hobby.
That's
so
cool.
just having some type of hobby, some type of outlet that's not work related.
Yeah, definitely.
Some guys are like, oh, well, my hobby is shooting. Well, it's still work related in a sense, but something that's disconnected, something that makes you a person, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, and I mean, we do build a bond with each other and friendships that extends to families and stuff,
Right.
but there is something to be said to kind of have that break. Like,
Yes.
it was told to me early on in my career too, like, this is what you do, but it's not who you are. And like, I've worked with some of those people who, you're on shift with them, and then they spend their weekends with other cops, and then they do vacations with other cops. It's like, all right, you got to have kind of that you've got to be able to decompress, have that downtime somewhere. All right. So what TV or movie do you think is like a good depiction of what detective life is like?
I feel like anytime we get called in, I always make the joke. It's like, all right, it's first 48.
Oh,
48 hours to solve this. Yeah. You got a little clock going. Got the timer on the phones.
Nice.
So there was a show on HBO called True Detective. Really, really great show. Unrealistic in some ways, but realistic in other ways. And there's some good theme music. So sometimes,
Right on.
I'm getting called out middle of the night, going out to somebody. I'll throw on that theme song, and I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm motivated now. Let's go.
Oh, dude.
Just imagine myself as like a character or something.
Yeah.
Matthew McConaughey,
Yeah, that'd
Woody
be
Harrelson.
That's fair.
Something.
And granted, it wasn't cop related, but it was kind of my go-to. Similarly, but like, you're in the office, and all of a sudden that call comes out or something, and then like you have just
The
the giant,
Office.
you have the giant panic. So I start pulling up the fire, like, oh my god, it's happening, and like everybody's scrambling around, grabbing their jackets, and like, what's the procedure, everybody? What's the procedure? Yeah, that was my go-to. All right. Well, out of all your predecessor detectives, are there any of them that you look up to or left a really strong impression with you?
I would say for me, he's still around, but he's been a close friend of mine ever since. But
Oh, you're too nice.
you already know who I'm talking about. But
And it's like,
yeah,
I'll stay humble, but go ahead.
Detective Matthew Peterson.
Oh, I mean, yeah, he's cool.
He's been around for a while, and he's just a wealth of knowledge and just a good guy. And
I refer to him as Mark Patterson.
Mark Patterson. But he's always kind of been somebody I looked up to. So I think he's just he's a great detective. Great, really, really good at what he does.
All right. All right. We'll go round 2 on this. All right. Mr. Lemus, anybody that you can think of that inspired you or like helped you along in your career?
That's hard because I feel like everybody was inspiration. But I definitely think, say Commander Escom, who's a commander now. He was my first sergeant when I started on patrol.
Yeah.
So I had him as a sergeant, and now he's a commander. So just that whole time, kind of like that mentor guiding.
Yeah.
He was a big one.
All right. Well, I'm glad I had you guys on the podcast. No, seriously. I mean, like having those mentors and those people that kind of went before you and can kind of help guide you and give you some coach and some feedback is huge. And the 2 guys you mentioned were very close to me in my career at various elements. So I couldn't agree. And the great thing is we have those people just littered throughout our
Mhm.
agency,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm sure you guys have done it in other agencies too. Just people you've met, you've leaned on and
Oh,
bounced,
definitely.
ideas off of or asked for advice. So that's huge, and that's big in this world because I mean, how often do you get a case that it links to another county or another agency or a certain
yeah.
crime spree that scatters multiple jurisdictions that you have to have those connections, and it's good to have those people to work with.
Yeah.
So inside and outside. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on one of these podcasts, I'm going to get mentioned as a good influence. I know it, but well, I appreciate you guys being here and just
thank
kind
you.
of just
thank you.
that look behind the curtain of what being a detective is like. Cause
Mm-hmm.
it's cool seeing the shows. Everybody loves the shows,
Yeah.
but like, this is what legit work, but still finding that passion and still
Yes.
having those, being able to make a difference and impact, whether you're, in a detention setting, in a patrol car, at a desk, whatever that looks like for everybody in their career. So
Yes.
I'm glad you guys are here to be able to share that with us.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you guys. Well,
Thank you.
that's another episode of Breaking and Adventuring, and we did have a lot of breaking on this one. A little crack it up. You can follow Adams County Sheriff's Office on all the social media platforms, and you can find our podcasts, obviously, at anywhere you like to download your podcasts. Just hit that like or subscribe button, and stay tuned for more episodes coming up. And if you would like to contribute, you can always email us any topic ideas or any questions that we can cover in upcoming episodes at communityconnections@adcogov.org. Thanks, everybody.